So, I know a lot of you out there have come to consult me on what books to read on Absinthe, the history, the myths, the legends, and everything like that. And unfortunately, I couldn't really give you an answer at the time, but today, that changes. So because I hadn't read any Absinthe books myself that are floating around out there, out of many, so many, I couldn't really give a precise recommendation for you guys who have asked me about that. And you guys know I'm not going to recommend something that unless I myself have read it. So, it would be weird if I would recommend books that I haven't read. Just saying. That goes for anything, whether it's Gothic literature or books about absinthe. I'm not going to recommend it unless I have actually read it. I've seen titles out there such as Absinthe, the cocaine of the 19th century, and I'm sitting there thinking, but cocaine was the cocaine of the 19th century, so I don't understand. I really don't like that they were using cocaine to compare absinthe to in the context of the 19th century. That kind of gives the implication that absinthe does have the same effect as illicit drugs, which it doesn't. We've discussed that before. Other books out there that I have seen and read the description of online seem to be really sensationalizing the bad effects that low-cost absinthe had on people and painted all absinthe with the same brush. And that further just cements the negative stereotypes about absinthe that we all know I want to push into a 6-foot deep hole and bury forever. And again, they were leaving gaps in explanations and history and, and it kind of leaves room for them to imply, unfortunately, that all absinthe in the pre-ban era had a magical ingredient that modern absinthe no longer has, and that's definitely not the case, and it's really unfair to paint all absinthe with the same brush. And that's just so annoying. I'm sorry. So damn annoying. I also found that they weren't really giving reasonable explanation as to why the ban was lifted in the first place. That's not exactly helpful either. So prior to reading this book, which I will get into, I have done a lot of research about the history of absinthe re-legalization during the dark age of absinthe, but it was hard to find any books out there that thoroughly seemed to pay attention to or articulate the occurrences which led to the absinthe ban being lifted after almost a century. So this book was sent to me by T.A. Bro, the owner of Jade Liqueurs, and he also sent me a bottle of Nouvelle Orléans, which was fantastic. I still have dreams about it. This book was written by himself as well as Bettina J. Whittles, and it's called Absinthe, the Exquisite Elixir. Long and short of it, I absolutely loved this book. I'll go into why. Still, guys, I am just still tickled that Ted Bro of Jade Liqueurs fucking autographed this for me. It's great. The history was very thorough, which is something that I really do appreciate because I'm a massive nerd and I love random little fun facts. For example, telling people the origin of the word buttload. It doesn't mean what you think it means. So it really goes into the earliest origins of absinthe, how it went from a digestive aid or cure-all tonic medicine to the most popular drink in the Western world. This book also extensively covers when it began being mass-produced as well as the situation involved with the parasite wiping out the French wine industry. Apparently, that was caused by British winemakers bringing American grapes to Europe for testing and experimentation, and that's when it was discovered that European wine grapes were not immune to the same things that American grapes were. That's what sparked the parasitic outbreak that led to the depletion of the vineyards in France, which drastically affected the ability to make wine, which caused the price of wine to just skyrocket. Insane. Only the very wealthy could afford wine during this period, but absinthe was one of those things that was enjoyed by all classes. While that opened the door for absinthe to become more popular, unfortunately the wine industry decided to demonize absinthe in order to get their business back, once they had recovered from the parasite. It's really kind of sucky it had to happen that way, but, you know, here we are. I really love how in-depth this book went in just about every aspect of life that was affected by absinthe. Completely different to how it is now. Absinthe was not seen as a novelty back then. It was actually a staple. It was, the most popular drink in the Western world. Absinthe wasn't necessarily an edgy thing during this time, but the bohemians and the artists who hung out in the cafes and drank absinthe adopted it as a symbol of freedom, creativity, and intelligence. Nowadays, it's considered a novelty and it's seen as edgy. Speaking of absinthe drinking artists and bohemians, this book really gives a lot of attention to famous absinthe drinkers and how absinthe inspired them, which is great. I love hearing about that. They touch on Charles Baudelaire, Paul Verlaine, Arthur Rimbaud, Vincent van Gogh, Henri Toulouse-Lautrec, Edward Manet, Elixir, Oscar Wilde, even Aleister Crowley. It was really interesting to learn that Manet's painting, The Absinthe Drinker, was initially bashed and shamed by the art-loving public of Paris, but a year later it became an adored piece of art in the Parisian art-loving world. Funny how that works, huh? It also shares Oscar Wilde's most famous quotes regarding absinthe, since he was a very frequent drinker of it. This book covers Parisian cafe culture and nightlife, and how it spread even as far as the United States during the pre-ban era. My favorite part of that was finding out that there was an article written in 1896 in Yakima, Washington, where I am originally from, which is crazy. And the story was about a man who walked into a bar, asked a bartender to sprinkle a few drops of absinthe on his fingers, and then proceeded to run the drops of absinthe through his mustache. Interesting, but bear with me. When prompted to explain himself, the man said,
"I'm calling on some ladies, so I want to take the whiskey odor away."
So here, in this context, not only do you see absinthe being portrayed in everyday life, because let's be real, it really was a huge part of everyday life back then. But in this strange little story, you see absinthe being used almost as an aphrodisiac to attract the ladies, which is exactly how it was portrayed in Bram Stoker's Dracula, which incidentally is the most accurate portrayal of absinthe in film I have ever seen, which just makes my little heart so happy. It's absolutely fascinating to see the influence of absinthe stretching so far west across the United States, where we most often see New Orleans as the focal point of absinthe in the country. It's really cool to see something regarding absinthe so early in the history of my native Washington state. And I really do love anecdotal evidence. In a lot of contexts, you see alcohol as being a manly thing. You see so many paintings and photographs of men in bars drinking their beverages, but when it comes to art, ads, and photographs depicting life with absinthe, you see so many more women involved in the imbibing of absinthe. It's great. It's really awesome because I feel like I can step into the painting or the ad or the photograph where said woman is featured drinking absinthe, and I can just sit down, join her, and have a good giggle, and I can relate to her in some way. It's really great. To me, absinthe is definitely something that has a distinctly feminine quality. She is sometimes referred to as the Green Goddess, not just the Green Fairy, but both symbols personify the things that artists of all kinds value most. Inspiration. This also goes so deeply into detail about how absinthe was re-legalized in Switzerland, France, and finally the United States. All of the nonsense and misconceptions about absinthe that we're all tired of hearing is all completely debunked. Even the misconception that absinthe makes you high like marijuana, which I'm sick of hearing. It goes into all the hard work that the author Ted Broe did to extensively test pre-ban era bottles of absinthe that were found in European estate sales in order to prove to the FDA that genuine absinthe in the pre-ban era was not harmful. There's a section on absinthe accoutrement and paraphernalia, even going far beyond the caraffes, glasses, spoons, sugar, and fountains. There's even more to it than that, and I didn't know that. And that's one of the amazing things about this book, is that even someone who knows a lot about absinthe history and has a great appreciation for absinthe will be learning a lot of things that they didn't know previously. One of my favorite parts of this book is explaining what low-quality brands of absinthe have done to hurt the reputation of upstanding brands of absinthe, including my biggest pet peeve, the flaming absinthe shot. In fact, I want to read you a passage. So my favorite part about this little passage here is that it is subtitled as a flaming disappointment, which is exactly how I feel about people thinking that you set absinthe on fire in order to drink it, which you don't. Anyway, I'm going to read this passage to you now. One important hallmark of inferior absinthes is that few would louche or cloud upon the addition of ice water, which rendered the original French service useless. To distract the consumer from significant disappointment, a new ritual was invented whereby absinthe was poured over a sugar cube, which was ignited and allowed to burn before being stirred into the glass. Such distractions were invented to lull the customer away from recognizing a ripoff. And it's true. To make matters worse, Hollywood adopted the false theatrics with films such as Moulin Rouge and From Hell, depicting absurd scenes, replete with flaming absinthe. Meanwhile, not one historic painting, drawing, photograph, or writing makes note of anyone setting absinthe alight, and with good reason. It ruins the drink, and it never happened. Such misinformation and antics had a particularly devastating effect in the UK, where the category was being killed as fast as it was being created, making absinthe reduced to rubbish, a flaming shot suitable only for drunken hooligans. I definitely agree. All this was made possible by one omission that was as problematic in the 19th century as it proved to be in the early 21st century, that, unlike Scotch whiskey or London gin, there was no legal definition for absinthe. This allowed anything to be put into a bottle and labeled absinthe, and undoubtedly, just about anything was. Only one nation passed a legal standard for absinthe, Switzerland, upon repealing the ban in 2005. As a result, none of the usual offenders could legally be sold there. So this is why I take issue with the Irish people try absinthe for the first time video, as well as the Irish people try the strongest brands of absinthe in the world. I take issue with that because almost all of the brands that were featured in these videos were gimmicky, low quality, very cheaply made and grossly made brands of absinthe. And it's very clear that they do not fit the standard of a high quality absinthe. So that's part of the reason why I took issue with those videos. On top of the, knocking back shots, that's kind of a given. Anyway, carrying on. There are food recipes that use absinthe in here. Maybe I'll do one or two in my future videos if you guys are interested. Please tell me if you are. There are also recipes for absinthe cocktails, some of which I have had in the past and have loved. I've absolutely loved. My favorites are the Sazerac cocktail, the Awakening, and the Corpse Reviver. Ooh, that one's good. Nice and tart. The last one I had the pleasure of trying for the first time in this gorgeous, adorable bohemian-themed bar in Edmonds called Calnero that I went to with my dear friend Heather. I miss you, baby cakes. I miss you so much. You're welcome to come to the island when this bullshit is over. If you love lemons, this is the cocktail for you. If you're on what we Washingtonians call the West Side, it's definitely worth paying a visit. In fact, I dare say it's a modern, slightly hippie version of what I imagine an absinthe cafe in the 19th century would be like. It has the same energy, and oh my god, I am addicted to their jalapeno poppers. They were so good. And finally, there is a section devoted to brief absinthe reviews by both Brian Robinson and Ted Bro himself. This section is going to be really, really helpful for those of you trying to determine what absinthe to buy and try out for yourself. I'm pleasantly surprised that a Washingtonian-born absinthe called Pacifique is featured in this section. I really, really want to try that one. It's been on my list for a while, but maybe further down the road. So whenever anyone asks me what book I recommend for learning the real, true, unsensationalized history of absinthe, I will point them here. This book really does have it all. and it's great. And it's a relatively quick read as well, which is awesome. I just took a while to read it because it's really hard for me to focus, from having ADHD and working 50 hours a week for the last couple of months. It's exhausting. This book will tell you the truth and will not lure you into believing the misconceptions that low-quality absinthe brands out there want you to believe. Also, if you want a video version of a lot of the amazing history this book gives you, check out the documentary Absinthe. It is so fun, engaging, and absolutely fascinating. You are going to love it. And I will leave links for both this book as well as the Absinthe documentary in the description below so you guys can find it. So, that is my review of Absinthe, the Exquisite Elixir. And thank you so much again to Ted Bro of Jade Liqueurs for sending this to me, because I'm just beyond thrilled that you did that and thought to do that for me. That's just great. And thank you again for the beautiful bottle of Jade Nouvelle Orleans. It was wonderful. And also, I want to give a bit of a shout out to Kenny's mom. She was kind enough to send me this absinthe scented soap that was made by this shop called the Soap Distillery. Small batches, no hangovers. I love it. Smells like anise, lemon, and peppermint. Yeah, it's definitely really heavy on the peppermint. That's probably the most prominent thing that I smell, and then I get the overtone of the lemon, and then I get the anise, but that's just me. But it is palm oil free, handmade, original formulation, and free of SLS and... I'm not going to say that word, free. And it's also vegan and cruelty free too, so... What's there not to like about this? I can't wait to use it. So apparently you're supposed to use this in the shower, but yeah. And I'll leave a link for this in the description below too, in case you guys are interested in checking it out. And again, thank you so much. It's wonderful. So guys, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you made it this far to the video, if you could please leave a green heart in the comment that you are going to leave on this video, that would be great, just so I can get an idea of who's watching all my videos all the way through. So be sure to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications so that you can get notified every time I post a video. However, my patrons will get to see my videos ahead of time, like probably a day or two before they actually go up to everyone else. So if you do want to join my patrons, that's totally up to you. No pressure. I am not going to hold a gun to your head, and I'm not going to beg you for money. Okay? I'm just letting you know. But anyway, you guys are amazing. I love you, and I will see you guys later. Bye!